Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Welcome to today's reading from Srimad Bhagavatam. During these days of Bhishmapanchaka, which started from Monday the 15th, we have started reading from Canto 1, Chapter 9. Passing of Bhishmadeva in the presence of Lord Krishna. We have read up to verses 12 so far, and we are just reading the translation and the purports by Srila Prabhupada, and we'll continue today from verse 13. Mukam karoti vachalam pangum langhayate girim yat kripatam ham vande Shri Gurum Dinatarinam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram Hari Om Tat Sat. Translation, verse 13. As far as my daughter-in-law Kunti is concerned, upon the great General Pandu's death, she became a widow with many children, and therefore she suffered greatly. And when you were grown up, she suffered a great deal also because of your actions. Purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. The sufferings of Kunti Devi are doubly lamented. She suffered greatly because of early widowhood and to get her minor children brought up in the royal family. And when her children were grown up, she continued to suffer because of her son's actions. So her sufferings continued. This means that she was destined to suffer by providence, and this one has to tolerate without being disturbed. Verse 14. Translation, in my opinion, this is all due to inevitable time under whose control everyone in every planet is carried, just as the clouds are carried by the wind. Purport. There is control by time all over the space within the universe, as there is control by time all over the planets. All the big gigantic planets, including the sun, are being controlled by the force of air, as the clouds are carried by the force of air. Similarly, the inevitable Kal or time controls even the action of the air and other elements. Everything therefore is controlled by the Supreme Kal, a forceful representative of the Lord within the material world. Thus Yudhishthir should not be sorry for the inconceivable action of time. Everyone has to bear the actions and reactions of time as long as one is within the conditions of material world. Yudhishthir should not think that he had committed sins in his previous birth and is suffering the consequence. Even the most pious has to suffer the condition of material nature. But a pious man is faithful to the Lord, for he is guided by the bona fide Brahmana and Vaishnava, following the religious principles. These three guiding principles should be the aim of life. One should not be disturbed by the tricks of eternal time. Even the great controller of the universe, Brahmaji, is also under the control of that time. Therefore, one should not grudge being thus controlled by time, despite being a true follower of religious principles. Verse 14 from chapter 9, first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Translation. Oh, how wonderful is the influence of inevitable time. It is irreversible. Otherwise, how can there be reverses in the presence of King Yudhishthir, the son of the demigod controlling religion Bhima, the great fighter with the club, the great bowman Arjun with his mighty weapon Gandiv, and above all the Lord, the direct well-wisher of the Pandavas. Purport. As far as the material or spiritual resources were required, there was no scarcity in the case of Pandavas. Materially, they were well equipped because two great warriors, namely Bhim and Arjun, were there. Spiritually, the king himself was a symbol of religion, and above all of them, the personality of Godhead. Lord Shri Krishna was personally concerned with their affairs as the well-wisher. And yet, there were so many reverses on the side of the Pandavas. Despite the power of pious acts, the power of personalities, the power of expert management, and the power of weapons under the direct supervision of Lord Krsna, the Pandavas suffered so many practical reverses. which can only be explained as due to the influence of Kala, inevitable time. Kala is identical with the Lord himself, and therefore the influence of Kala indicates the inexplicable wish of the Lord himself. There is nothing to be lamented when a matter is beyond the control of any human being. Verse 16, translation: O king, no one can know the plan of the Lord Sri Krishna, even though great philosophers inquire exhaustively, they are bewildered. Purport: the bewilderment of Maharaj Yudhishthir over his past sinful acts and the resultant sufferings, etc., is completely negated by the great authority Bhishma, one of the 12 authorized persons. He is one of the 12 Mahajans. Bhishma wanted to impress upon Maharaj Yudhishthir that since time immemorial no one, including such demigods as Shiva and Brahma, could ascertain the real plan of the Lord. So what can we understand about it? It is useless to inquire about it. Even the exhaustive philosophical inquiries of sages cannot ascertain the plan of the Lord. The best policy is simply to abide by the orders of the Lord without argument. The sufferings of the Pandavas were never due to their past deeds. The Lord had to execute the plan of establishing the kingdom of virtue, and therefore his own devotees suffered temporarily in order to establish the conquest of virtue. Bhishmadeva was certainly satisfied by seeing the triumph of virtue, and he was glad to see King Yudhishthir on the throne. Although he himself fought against them, even a great fighter like Bhishma could not win the battle of Kurukshetra, because the Lord wanted to show that vice cannot conquer virtue, regardless of who tries to execute it. Bhishmadev was a great devotee of the Lord, but he chose to fight against the Pandavas by the will of the Lord, because the Lord wanted to show that a fighter like Bhishma cannot win on the wrong side. Verse 17. Translation: O best among the descendants of Bharat, that is Yudhishthir, I maintain therefore that all this is within the plan of the Lord, accepting the inconceivable plan of the Lord. You must follow it. You are now the appointed administrative head, and my Lord, you should now take care of those subjects who are now rendered helpless. Purport: the popular saying is that a housewife teaches the daughter-in-law by teaching the daughter. Similarly, the Lord teaches the world by teaching the devotee. The devotee does not have to learn anything new from the Lord, because the Lord teaches the sincere devotee always from within. Whenever, therefore, a show is made to teach the devotee, as in the case of the teachings of Bhagavad-Gita, it is for the teaching the less intelligent man. A devotee's duty, therefore, is to ungrudgingly accept tribulations from the Lord as a benediction. The Pandavas were advised by Bhishmadev to accept the responsibility of administration without hesitation. The poor subjects were there without protection due to the battle of Kurukshetra, and they were awaiting the assumption of power by Maharaj Yudhishthir. A pure devotee of the Lord accepts tribulations as favors from the Lord. Since the Lord is absolute, there is no mundane difference between the two. Verse 18, translation: this Sri Krishna is no other than the inconceivable original personality of Godhead. He is the first Narayan, the supreme enjoyer, but he is moving amongst the descendants of King Vrishni, just like one of us, and he is bewildering us with his self-created energy. The Vedic system, now we are moving to the purport. The Vedic system of acquiring knowledge is the deductive process. The Vedic knowledge is received perfectly by disciplic succession from authorities. Such knowledge is never dogmatic, as ill-conceived by less intelligent persons. The mother is the authority to verify the identity of the father. She is the authority for such confidential knowledge. Therefore, authority is never dogmatic. In the Bhagavad-Gita, this truth is confirmed in the second verse of the 4th chapter, and the perfect system of learning is to receive it from the authority. The very same system is accepted universally as truth, but only the false arguer speaks against it. For example, modern spacecraft fly in the sky, and when scientists say that they travel to the other side of the moon, men believe these stories blindly because they have accepted the modern scientists as authorities. The authorities speak and the people in general believe them. But in the case of Vedic truths, they have been taught not to believe. Even if they accept them, they give a different interpretation. Each and every man wants a direct perception of Vedic knowledge, but foolishly they deny it. This means that the misguided man can believe one authority, the scientist, but will reject the authority of the Vedas. The result is that people have degenerated. Here is an authority speaking about Sri Krishna as the original personality of Godhead and the first Narayan. Even such an impersonalist as Acharya Shankar has said in the beginning of his commentaries, beyond the material creation. The universe is one of the material creations, but Narayan is transcendental to such material paraphernalia. Bhishmadeva is one of the 12 Mahajans who know the principles of transcendental knowledge. His confirmation of Lord Sri Krishna's being the original personality of Godhead is also corroborated by the impersonalist Shankara. All other acharyas have also confirmed this statement, and thus there is no chance of not accepting Lord Sri Krishna as the original personality of Godhead. Bhishmadev says that he is the first Narayan. This is also confirmed by Brahmaji in the Bhagavatam in the 10th canto, 14th chapter, verse 14. Krishna is the first Narayan in the spiritual world, that is Vaikuntha. There are unlimited numbers of Narayans who are all the same personality of Godhead and are considered to be the plenary expansions of the original personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. The first form of the Lord Sri Krishna first expands himself as the form of Baladev, and Baladev expands in so many other forms such as Sankarshan, Pradyumna, Aniruddha, Vasudev, Narayan, Purusha, Rama and Nrsimha. All these expansions are one and the same Vishnu Tattva. And Sri Krishna is the original source of all the plenary expansions. I'll repeat this. The first form of the Lord Sri Krishna first expands himself as the form of Baladeva, and Baladeva expands in so many other forms such as Sankarshan, Pradyumna, Aniruddha, Vasudev, Narayan, Purusha, Rama and Nrsimha. All these expansions are one and the same Vishnu Tattva, and Sri Krishna is the original source of all the plenary expansions. He is therefore the direct personality of Godhead. He is the creator of the material world, and he is the predominating deity known as Narayan in all the Vaikuntha planets. Therefore, his movements amongst the human beings are another sort of bewilderment. The Lord therefore says in the Bhagavad-Gita that foolish persons consider him to be one of the human beings without knowing the intricacies of his movements. The bewilderment regarding Sri Krishna is due to the action of his twofold internal and external energies upon the third one, called marginal energy. The living entities are expansion of his marginal energy, and thus they are sometimes bewildered by the internal energy and sometimes by the external energy. By internal energetic bewilderment, Sri Krishna expands himself into unlimited numbers of Narayans and exchanges or accepts transcendental loving service from the living entities in the transcendental world. And by his external energetic expansions, he incarnates himself in the material world amongst the men, animals or demigods to re-establish his forgotten relation with the living entities in different species of life. Great authorities like Bhishma, however, escape his bewilderment by the mercy of the Lord. Verse 19, translation. O King, Lord Shiva, Narada, the sage amongst the demigods, and Kapila, the incarnation of Godhead, all know very confidentially about his glories through direct contact. Purport. Pure devotees of the Lord are all Buddhas or persons who know the glories of the Lord in different transcendental loving services. As the Lord has innumerable expansions of his plenary form, there are innumerable pure devotees of the Lord who are engaged in the exchange of service of different humors. Ordinarily, there are 12 great devotees of the Lord, namely Brahma, Narad, Shiva, Kumara, Kapila, Manu, Prahlad, Bhishma, Janak, Shukadev Goswami, Bali Maharaj and Yamraj. These are the 12 great Mahajans or the 12 great devotees of the Lord. Although one of them has mentioned only 3 important names of the 12 who knows the glories of the Lord, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, one of the great acharyas in the modern age, explains that Anubhav or the glory of the Lord is first appreciated by the devotee in ecstasy, manifesting the symptoms of perspiring, trembling, weeping, bodily eruptions, etc., which are further enhanced by steady understanding of the glories of the Lord. Such different understandings of bhavas are exchanged between Yashoda and the Lord, binding the Lord by the ropes, and in the chariot driving by the Lord in the exchange of love with Arjun. These glories of the Lord are exhibited in his being subordinated before his devotees, and that is another feature of the glories of the Lord. Shukadev Goswami and the Kumars, although situated in the transcendental position, became converted by another feature of bhava and turned into pure devotees of the Lord. Tribulations imposed upon the devotees by the Lord constitute another exchange of transcendental bhava between the Lord and the devotees. The Lord says, I put my devotee into difficulty, and thus the devotee becomes more purified in exchanging transcendental bhava with me. I'll have to repeat this line. Such a beautiful line. The Lord says, I put my devotee into difficulty, and thus the devotee becomes more purified in exchanging transcendental bhava with me. Placing the devotee into material trouble means delivering him from the illusory material relations. The material relations are based on reciprocation of material enjoyment, which depends mainly on material resources. Therefore, when material resources are withdrawn by the Lord, the devotee is 100% attracted toward the transcendental loving service of the Lord. Thus the Lord snatches the fallen soul from the mire of material existence. Tribulations offered by the Lord to his devotee are different from the tribulations resulting from vicious action. All these glories of the Lord are especially known to the great Mahajans like Brahma, Shiva, Narad, Kapil, Kumar and Bhishma as mentioned above, and one is able to grasp it by their grace. So the tribulations offered by the Lord to his devotee are different from the tribulations resulting from vicious action. All these glories of the Lord are especially known to the great Mahajans like Brahma, Shiva, Narad, Kapil, Kumara and Bhishma as mentioned above, and one is able to grasp it by their grace. Verse 20, translation, O King, that personality whom out of ignorance only you thought to be your maternal cousin, your very dear friend, well-wisher, counselor, messenger, benefactor, etc., is that very personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. Purport, Lord Sri Krishna, although acting as the cousin, brother, friend, well-wisher, counselor, messenger, benefactor, etc. of the Pandavas, was still the supreme personality of Godhead. Out of his causeless mercy and favor upon his unalloyed devotees, he performs all kinds of service, but that does not mean that he has changed his position as the absolute person. To think of him as an ordinary man is the grossest type of ignorance. So we will continue from verse 21 of chapter 9 of Canto 1 from Srimad Bhagavatam next time. Thank you for joining in this beautiful reading which we started at the beginning of the Bhishmapanchaka. Wish you all a very Krishna conscious day ahead. Hariam Tat Sat. Hare Krishna.